Hello and welcome to the Legacy Crusaders YouTube channel. My name is Benji and today I'll be showing the deck I'm piloting during the current format, unless for some reason something changes or I find something that I like better. But I'm playing a super combo deck. It is Infernoid Cyber Orcusts, and pretty much I just tried to give my deck all the strengths I wanted and limiting the weaknesses as much as possible. So first, the Infernoid engine. I play 3 copies of Infernoid Decatron. He is the preferable normal summon because I am going second. Infernoid Decatron plus any of the small Infernoids is full Orcust combo, while at the same time eliminating 2 cards because all of the Infernoids have spot removal effects. So you can make him into one of the spot removals, remove a card, summon one of the little ones, remove another card, make a nightmare, pop another card, and then do Orcust combo. This is a hard-going second deck, so odds are those things will be happening. For the other Infernoids, I play 1 copy of Prometheus, the level 1. This can target a set card and shuffle it back into the deck. And they can't respond with the set card, so this gives you potential to deal with some counter traps, which you might not be able to deal with normally. You know, set roars, set crescendos, things like that. Called by the Grave, nice one to hit. Play 1 copy of Infernoid Antro. This one can target face-up cards that your opponent has on the field and return them to the hand. Can't use it on your own cards, but that's okay. Play 1 copy of Infernoid Harmadic. This guy can target a monster on the field and destroy it. Yours or theirs, doesn't matter. He can't attack the turn he activates this effect. And this is Infernoid Petrula. This one can target a spell or trap card on either side of the field and destroy it. Occasionally I'll pop my own, mostly because I play Mystic Mine, and sometimes I have to pop my own Mystic Mine. So he's one of the potential outs to my own Mystic Mine. Because eventually you do need to push for game in this deck, despite playing Mystic Mine, because you don't play any alternative win condition but to combo off and OTK your opponent. So pretty much, sit on mine, OTK your opponent. All of the small Infernoids, levels 1 to 4, with the exception of the Decatron, have the same summoning condition. They can be summoned from your hand by banishing 1 Infernoid from your hand or graveyard. They can only be summoned during your turn, and during your opponent's turn, they all have the quick effect that you contribute a monster you control, target a card in your opponent's graveyard, and banish it. So it's one of the features of Infernoids that I wanted in my deck to mess around my opponent's cards, because most decks don't have quite enough disruption on their opponent's graveyard. Call by the Grave is nice, but not always relevant. For the big Infernoids, I play 1 copy of Infernoid Sajet. This is to resolve Feast, where you can summon 2 Infernoid Decatrons, because Feast says summon monsters from your deck whose total level is 8. That would be Sajet, level 6, and 2 Decatrons is 7 and 8. Feast does ignoring their summoning conditions. I play 1 copy of Infernoid Sights Moss. This is level 7. At the end of the battle phase, if this card battled, well, you attack with it and battled, you can banish 1 card in the field. It doesn't target. Pretty strong. Both of these, the medium-sized Infernoids, have the same summoning condition. You have to banish 2 Infernoids from your hand or graveyard to summon this card from your hand or graveyard. So unlike the little ones, if these are in the graveyard, you can still use them. The little ones have to be in hand, though. So they also have a higher summoning cost, and they have the same quick effect that the little ones do, which is to tribute a monster you control, to target a card in your opponent's graveyard, and banish it. Although their effects can be used during either player's turn. So Jet's battle effect isn't really relevant. When it declares an attack, you can make your opponent banish 1 card from the extra deck. Sometimes your opponent will accidentally banish a card that's more important than they expected it to be, but usually they just get rid of whatever garbage card they had in there. I don't usually activate his effect because it's ogre bait, and you just don't see the need to get ogred. The last Infernoids I play is 2 copies of Infernoid Deviati. In Deviati can be summoned from your hand or graveyard by banishing 3 Infernoids. When Deviati is summoned, it destroys all spell and trap cards on the field except for void cards. So a few of the void spells that do wind up in this deck on the field will not get destroyed when you activate Deviati's effect. It also has the effect that when a monster effect is activated, you can tribute a monster you control to negate the activation and banish that card, which is kind of neat. You could actually negate your own cards sometimes, which does come up. It is relevant. This doesn't have the quick effect to banish. And then I play 2 copies of Infernoid Inoku. And Inoku's effect is to special summon this from hand or field, hand or graveyard. You can banish 3 Infernoids. When he's summoned, destroy all monsters on the field except for himself. He has the opposite effect of Deviati. You can negate the activation or the effect of a spell or trap card and tribute a monster and banish that card. So you tribute a monster, negate a spell or trap, and he nukes the board, the monsters. They combo nicely with Dingirsu because you can protect your cards. Pretty cool. Now all of the Infernoids have the same restriction that you cannot special summon them unless the total number of effect, the total level of effect monsters, the total level and rank of effect monsters is 8 or less. So once you summon one of these, you can't summon any other ones, although link monsters don't count against that, so you can summon a lot of links and then summon these guys at the end. For the Orcust package, I play 2 copies of Orcust Nightmare. You actually do need to play 2, and it's not just because you draw one. You actually don't mind drawing one, because discarding it means you have full access to the Orcust engine on the following turn. But if you draw into the symbol skeleton, you actually need a monster in the deck to summon off of the harp horror. So if you draw the harp, it's you have full combo anyway. If you draw into the symbol skeleton, you discard the symbol skeleton, but you still need Orcust Nightmare in the deck to summon off of harp horror, because you can't activate the symbol skeleton to put it back in the deck, and you need it into the later parts of the Orcust combo. I play 1 copy of Orcust Harp Horror, and I'm playing 1 copy of Symbol Skeleton. Last format, I was more interested in having the extra Symbol Skeleton, make sure it was in the graveyard for when I needed it. Harp Horror, if you're not familiar with what these do, Orcust Nightmare, you can target a monster on the field, increase its attack, then send a Dark Machine from your deck to the graveyard and increase the attack of the monster selected by the level of that monster times 100. So you can just give your guy 400 attack to send Harp Horror to the graveyard. Harp Horror, you can banish from the graveyard to summon an Orcust monster from your deck. Usually you summon Orcust Symbol Skeleton, unless you already have it in the grave, in which case you summon the 2nd copy of Orcust Nightmare. And then Orcust Symbol Skeleton says you can banish this card from the graveyard, target an Orcust monster in your graveyard, and special summon it. And each of these is a hard once per turn. And all of these effects say if you've activated this effect and resolved this effect, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except dark monsters. So once you start using these, you're locked into dark. So the idea is to use Void Feast, send all your Infernoids to the graveyard, summon back, make enough to do the Orcust combo, but right after you make Galatea the first time, before you activate Orcust Nightmare, you summon the Infernoids to have the bodies you need to OTK your opponent. Play 1 copy of World Legacy World Wand, which has the same restriction. When you banish it, you can only summon darks the rest of the turn. There's 2 effects. One doesn't apply to this deck because I don't play any additional World Legacy cards. Something about when it's sent to the grave, you can special a World Legacy from your hand, but we're not using that effect. Its effect is you can banish this card from the graveyard to target one of your banished Orcust monsters and special summon it. Also, because this is not an Orcust card, it doesn't have the same relevance as you would with the field spell, Orcust Babble, because it can't become a quick effect like all the other ones can. Onto the Cyber Dragon engine. I play 3 copies of Cyber Dragon Core. Core is the 1 card starter I feel I need in this deck. When you summon Core, you can add a Cyber Spell or Trap from your deck to your hand. So usually you get Cyber Emergency, then use Emergency to add Nashter. Nashter is your 2nd monster to Orcust combo with. Now they have the same name, so you actually have to turn Cyber Dragon Core into Nashter. Not Nashter. Cyber Dragon Core you turn to Salamangreat Almirage, and then you summon Nashter, and then you do the Orcust combo. Because you have a lot of expendable monsters in your hand you can discard. So you kind of neg one using Nashter to give you a 2nd monster, but it doesn't really matter, because you don't care. It has a graveyard effect as well. When this card's in the graveyard, and you have no monsters, you can banish this card and summon a Cyber Dragon monster from your decks. So you can summon regular Cyber Dragon, you can do another Core, you can do hers, whatever ones you want to play, Nashter if the scenario is right. It doesn't come up too often. Also, what's nice is for Mega Fleet, you can just set Core and then fuse with your opponent's extra deck monsters. I've named 2 Cyber Dragons because I am going 2nd, and this card is live enough, but just in case, it's not the preferable 2nd monster that I need for the Orcust combo, but it's nice to have 2 of those. I'm playing 2 copies of Cyber Dragon Nashter, which you need as your 2nd monster for the Orcust combo with the Cyber Dragon Core, or whatever other monster you have. So there's just more Cyber Dragons that do this. When this card's summoned, you can special a machine monster from your graveyard with 2100 attack or defense. So Dingirsu has 2100 defense, so that's kind of useful. If you draw Nashter late game, you can get back Dingirsu, which is cool. Also, that's about it. There's not much else to say about this guy. I don't feel I need 3 because he's not. If I start with him, I don't have another monster anyway for the combo, so he's preferably a search target. Another thing to mention is Core is actually a mandatory effect when you summon it. So if you don't want to activate the on-field effect, you can just set it face down, use it to make a fusion, and then it's engrave if your opponent destroys the fusion. Next, I play one copy of Cyber Dragon Hers. This is usually what I summon if I can do the Orcust combo without needing Nashter, so I can discard it and replenish my hand with the Cyber Dragon, or to fish the core back out of the graveyard. Don't need it too desperately. Next is one copy of Cyber Dragon Veer, which helps me if I don't have the discards I need for the certain parts of the Cyber Dragon combo. If you open core and like emergency, you just search Veer, especially the Veer with the core, and then you can search the Nashter and save it for next turn. And then you can just use the core into Almirage with the Veer, and you can do the combo. Veer, I'm not sure if I need it, but it's been working out fine. The hand traps, I'm playing one copy of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, one copy of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, and one copy of Effect Veiler. I don't like playing a lot of cards that are hard ones per turns, so, try and have some variety. I know I can play additional Veilers, but these give you some additional options. I like to play a variety of cards. There's no particular hand trap I think is the best right now. I guess Veiler, but Veiler only works on my opponent's turn during their main phase. It's a little more restrictive. These can also be the second monster if you have an Infernoid to be the first monster for the Orcust combo. I also play 3 impermanents, so I do play additional hand traps, but I play 3 monster ones because I feel like these are once per turn, and this is limited, and I find the imperms are also very helpful. For backer removal, I play 2 copies of Twin Twister and 2 copies of Galaxy Cyclone. Now, I play the Galaxy Cyclones to destroy my opponent's back row where I don't have to do a discard. So if my opponent has a Salamangreat Roar, I can pop it face down without discarding a card. But also, this gives me a way to destroy my own Mystic Mine without wasting resources. Because this card in the graveyard, other than the turn it's sent to the grave, you can banish this card and target a face-up spell or trap on the field and destroy it. So you can out Floodgates. You can also out your own Mystic Mine. So it works pretty nicely. I like this ratio in a 60-card deck, which this is, if you weren't aware. I'm playing 1 copy of Monster Reborn, and Monster Reborn is useful if you try to do Orcust Mermaid and your opponent ashes it and you discard any Orcust monster. You can just, preferably it'd be the Orcust Nightmare or the Harp. You can Monster Reborn it and continue with the Orcust combo. Also, Monster Reborn, since you're going second, is usually live to take one of your opponent's monsters, and you can do the Orcust combo with their monster as the second monster. I'm playing 1 copy of Foolish Burial. There's a lot of good cards to send in this deck. You can even send Cyber Hers to add Cyber Dragon to start your combos off. 1 for 1's pretty good. You can send Hers to grave and then fuse away your opponent's monster, or you can summon Decatron. For the Cyber cards, I'm playing 2 copies of Emergency. This will search any Cyber Dragon monster. And Cyber Repair Plant, just 1. Because sometimes you want to do 2 searches in the turn, and this one's harder to use. You need to have a Cyber Dragon already in the graveyard. A light machine, anyway. Actually, no, you need a Cyber Dragon in the graveyard to use this, not a light machine, excuse me. You could search any light machine with this. So normally you start with Emergency, search Core, normal Core, search Repair Plant, go into Almirage, and then activate Repair Plant, search Nashter for the second monster for the combo. These are hard once per turns, but if your opponent negates the activation and sends it to the graveyard, you can discard a card, add it back to your hand, and then activate it again because your activation was negated. Pretty neat. Happens quite often. Played 3 copies of Void Banishment. This is the Infernoid search spell. Not necessarily as good as the cards it searches, but this is what you need to resolve Feast. So this is the backup turn 1 play. If you don't open Cyber Dragon Core to do the Orcust combo. If you do both, you should win the game. But the search card is normally Void Imagination, which hopefully you just open. This is like Shaddoll Fusion on crack. If your opponent has a monster from the extra deck, but you don't, so unlike Shaddoll Fusion, you can't have an extra deck monster when you use this, you can fusion summon an Infernoid using monsters from your deck as material, up to 6. Also, and it sends itself to grave as cost. It can't be warninged, can be ashed. When you leave it on field, it reduces the level of all Infernoids to 1, whose levels aren't normally 1, and it halves their attack. But it doesn't matter, because once you fuse off of it, you can do whatever you want. And you can play this again if your level limits are locked. Like I mentioned the level limits earlier, the second copy, you can just play the Imagination onto the field, summon a bunch of the guys. They do half damage, but you have so many big beaters, your opponent can't really do anything about it. Next, I play a field spell engine of 1 Terraforming and 3 copies of Mystic Mine. So Mystic Mine, I believe, is the best card in the game at the moment. Not saying it's fair, not saying it should exist, but while it does exist, I'm going to play it, and it's really good going second against any deck that can't infinitely negate everything. All my cards are really good 1 card must negate type cards, Just summoning a Cyber Dragon outs whatever's in the extra monster zone. Imagination forces negate. Mystic Mind forces negate. Banishment searching for Banishment searching for imagination forces negate. So many things force and negate. Evenly matched forces and negate. So these are my field spells, as well as one copy of Orcust Babel, which you can always perform the Orcust combo where your opponent has more monsters than you, and then in the end of the combo use Galatea to set the Orcust Babel over the Mystic Mind so you can continue to play. Next are the trap cards, which there are quite a few. I play a lot of traps that get activated from my hand. I play 3 copies of Evenly Matched and 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Impermanence is very helpful for disrupting your opponent on the first turn. Additionally, it lets you play through floodgate monsters, whether it be Inspector Border or Vanity's Fiend or something similar. I play 2 copies of Orcust Crescendo, which is the counter trap for the Orcust deck that can negate anything as long as you control a Orcust Link monster. Also, other than the turn that you use its effect to negate something, you can banish it from the graveyard and add any Dark Machine from your banish zone or your deck to your hand. So you negate 1 turn, then assuming you don't need to summon anything that isn't a Dark Machine, you could just use it on the next turn to search your Symbol Skeleton and get it back in play. And I play 1 copy of Void Feast, which you search off the Void Banishment, and that's the main deck. Works pretty nicely. The hands are usually surprisingly more live than you'd expect, and this is going second deck, so depending on the scenario, your card should be able to play through. Like, just shuffling this up now, just gonna see one hand and just see if it's playable, then I'll show you the extra deck. So going second, Cyber Dragon Core. Well, if we went first, this is already full combo. Cyber Dragon helps going second, so this and this you don't even need to use Nashter. So Banishment, this will be great going first. This is full Orcust combo plus Void Feast, which is crazy. This also lets you fusion on them if they've been an extra deck monster, and if they do stop your combo going second, you just search a card with it. Nashter is pretty nice as well. This is too many Cyber Dragons, but it's not bad. Either way, this could break a board. 6 card Decatron. Biggest issue with this hand seems to be that you have a disputing normal summon, which is rare in this deck because there aren't that many normal summons. We got the 3 cores and the 3 Decatrons, and that's really all we normal summon. The other cards are really discards. Anyways, on to the extra deck. Excuse me. All right, the extra deck. Link monsters, Link 1s, play 1 Salamangreat Almirage. Only purpose of Almirage, link away Cyber Dragon Core, so it's no longer named Cyber Dragon. Other Link 1 is Nightmare Mermaid. This is for starting the Orcust combo. When this card is Link Summoned, discard a card, special summon a Nightmare from your deck, and we summon Orcust Nightmare, which gives you an Orcust, which means you can make Galatea. Speaking of, we're going to get into the Nightmares, or the Link 2s. So Nightmare Cerberus, which is a Link 2, which is when it's Link Summoned, you can discard a card, destroy a special summon monster in your opponent's main monster zone. And Nightmare Phoenix, when it's Link Summoned, you can target discard a card and target a card in the spell and trap card zone and destroy it. And both of these are the link requirement for Nightmare Cerberus, which is to use a Nightmare monster, which is not Nightmare Mermaid. So you start with one of these, usually the Cerberus, because usually the Phoenix is a little more useful in matchups. Then you go into the Mermaid, discard a card, and you do the Orcust combo. 1 Galatea in the main deck. I do side some extra deck monsters because there are some problems with this deck in reference to matchups. I'll discuss that when we get to the side deck. I play 1 Longyear Sioux. This is part of the current Orcust combo, and Topologic Bomber Dragon, also part of the Orcust combo. So Galatea can't be destroyed by battle when it's linked. Longyear Sioux can't be destroyed by card effects when he's linked, and Topologic Bomber blows up all monsters in the main monster zone when a monster is summoned to a zone a link monster points to. So normally you end with him in the Orcust field spell. That way you can just pop everything in their main monster zones when you want to. So that's the end of 1 combo, or you can end with Longyear Sioux and the counter trap to negate anything, and Dingyear Sioux. So those are the 2 end boards. Bomber also does burn damage when it attacks, so it always does 3,000 when it attacks over a monster that's smaller than it that could kill. Next I play 1 Boral Sword Dragon, 1 copy of Dingyear Sioux, Orcust of the Evening Star. Then for the Chimera Techs, I play 1 copy of Mega Fleet, and I play 1 copy of Fortress Dragon. So Mega Fleet is for Sky Strikers and any deck that has extra deck monsters, whereas Fortress Dragon is only good against Sky Strikers and Orcust decks and Cyber Dragons, so any machine deck. Not good against Pendulum machine decks like Dynamist or Klee because you can't send them to the graveyard, so you can't perform the fusion summon with those monsters. That's something to worth mentioning. And next I play 3 copies of Elder Entity Test, which is just a card you send to the graveyard off the effect of Infernoid Tiara. When the Natessas are sent to the graveyard, you can target a card on the field and destroy it. That could be your own Tiara because its level is too high to summon the Infernoids that you send to the graveyard with the fusion spell. It could also be your Mystic Mine if you want to turn that off, or your opponent's back row. There's a bunch of things you can do with these. But that's the extra deck. I will briefly get into the side deck, and you'll see why I actually side some extra deck cards. I think it makes sense. You may or may not. Next, I play in the side deck 2 copies of Forbidden Chalice, which is a quick play negation card. I use it going second mostly when I expect my opponent to make something like True King of All Calamities or Abyss Dweller, which you can't negate really with an Infinite Impermanence unless they play it in a really poor manner. I also play 2 copies of Demise to the Land, which is when your opponent special summons a monster, you can activate a field spell from your deck. So these are just replacing Metaverse. So if I go first, I could set this as a way to get Mystic Mine on my opponent. A neat little feature of this deck is that the Infernoids allow you to summon an Infernoid that can banish a card from the graveyard and activate Mystic Mine. So now if your opponent makes 2 monsters, or let's say they summon 1 monster and they put a card in the graveyard in the process, you can then, let's say you normal Decatron and make Seismos, and you activate Mystic Mine, and your opponent like normal summons a monster, you can use the Decatron's effect as Seismos to tribute itself as cost to banish their card in the graveyard, and now they've locked under Mine. But this can just put the Mine on the board when they special summon. So the activation condition makes this worse than Metaverse, but it can't be hashed, so that's pretty neat. Next I play 1 copy of Metaverse for the same reason. Usually when these 3 come in, 2 of the Mystic Mines come out. Don't want to have too many field spell searchers. But it's also nice to open this after you do Orcust combo because it lets you end on the field spell and the counter trap. That's also the reason I play the 2 counter traps, because I want to open one of them so that I can set the field spell. I play the next copy of Void Feast, so I play a second Void Feast, and like a lot of the cards in this extra deck, it's in the side deck, its purpose here is if it's a bad match. What I mean by that is a lot of the cards in this deck don't work if your opponent doesn't play an extra deck, so Imagination is a very dead card, so this replaces one of the Imaginations. Because it's just, the fusion spell doesn't do anything if they don't control an extra deck monster. So if they don't play them, you just pull it out for this. Or if you're fairly certain your opponent's going to make you go first, this can also go in place of going second cards like the hand traps or the evenly matches. Next I play 2 copies of Anti-Spell Fragrance. This is for the Pendulum matchup. It's also just a good card to set in addition to performing the Orcust combo. I usually only put it in for Pendulums. Another issue you have with this deck is you don't know. I mean, you're blind second, but you don't. Once your opponent sees an evenly matched card that's very clearly a blind second card, you don't know if they're going to make you go first or second. So this one's kind of hard to decide. I usually, if I don't know, I'll put in 1, but if I'm pretty sure, I'll put in both. Or if I'm playing Pendulums, I might choose to go first and play both of them. I play 1 copy of Imperial Order for Sky Strikers, 2 copies of Red Reboot because you can kill your opponent through trap cards, unlike a lot of decks that do play Red Reboot. So last I play a few extra deck monsters. I play another Mega Fleet Dragon. So if my opponent doesn't play any machine monsters in their board, then the Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon doesn't do enough. So I put in the second Mega Fleet instead of the Fortress Dragon. And then if the if my matchup when my opponent is really bad, then I also instead of that, this goes in for Tiara. If they don't play an extra deck, the Mega Fleet will go in for Tiara as well as these 3 cards. A second Dingirsu, a Doolittle Chimera, which you could use off of Void Feast, and the second Galatea, because the Orcust stuff becomes much more significant when you just don't have a way to do the Infernoid fusion. So the Infernoids are only going to get onto the board through Void Feast. So that was the theory here. It may or may not make sense. Whatever you think, leave in the comments. I try to share my decks on the blog channel, which is where you're probably watching this, because no one agrees with anything I do when I build decks. I make combo decks to have really high ceilings, weird floors, a lot of interesting features and abilities that other decks just don't have. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you disagree with anything, leave that in the comments. You agree with everything, leave that in the comments. Subscribe, share it if you want. And you guys have a wonderful day.